Problem number 1. So some of you are making this harder than it is. This is really, really easy, okay? Watch. I look at where the number x is. I look at the number. What's the opposite of that number? Positive 1. That's the first number in my center. I look at where the y is. I look at the number. I do the opposite of that number. So what's the opposite of negative 2? Positive 2. That's the center. Then I take the radius and I square root it. So what's the square root of 9? So that's not the radius, that's the radius squared. I square root the 9 and I get a radius of 3. Then I take this number and I graph it. So 1, 2 means that we go to the right 1 and up 2. A radius of 3 means we go a distance of 3 from the center. So I'm just going to start right at that dot and count. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. That is where my circle goes, and I try to sketch it as carefully and accurately as possible, but I understand that it's hard to draw circles. Okay. There's no number here. When there's no number, what does that usually mean the number is? 0. There's no number there. When there's no number, what does that mean? The number is 0. How do we find the radius? We square root the 25. What's the square root of 25? The square root of 25 is 5. So we put the center on our paper at 0, and we find the points that are 5 around. This is just like the one we did on the example on the back of the paper. And there's our circle. Okay, number 3. Tricky thing here. What's the opposite of positive 2? Negative 2. What's the opposite of positive 1? Negative 1. What's the square root of 4? The square root of 4 is 2. We graph that point. Left 2, down 1 because of the negatives. And then we count the radius. 2, 2, 2, 2. We sketch our circle. Okay, number 4. What's the opposite of negative 1? Positive 1. What's the opposite of positive 3? Negative 3. What's the square root of 16? 4. We graph the point, right 1, down 3. There's some of you that are really not focused, especially some of you that when I came around, you weren't really working on this. You're okay? Okay, so then we go 4 in every direction, and we sketch in the circle. Do we get this? Yeah. Okay, I have one more example for you. I know you think we're done, but we're not. Okay, so here's what we just did. In each of these problems, you were given an equation. You found the center, you found the radius, you graphed the circle. You're going to be doing some of that same things on your assignment, okay, on some of the problems. But the first problems on the assignment actually have you writing an equation. Write the equation. So let's practice writing equations. For the center at 0, negative 3, and I'm going to give you a really weird radius. The radius is the square root of 7. Okay? So here's example number 1 we did earlier. Here's our new example, example number 2. Example 1 was really easy because the center was at 0, 0. So since the center was at 0, 0, we didn't have to subtract the zeros at all. We just wrote x squared, y squared, and then all we had to do was square the 3. Remember that problem earlier? Writing an equation. That's what we're doing again. We just have a harder problem. Okay, so here's the formula. X minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. Now, one thing I want you to start learning how to do, if you haven't already, is how to use your formula sheet to do this stuff, because you get to use your formula sheet on the CRT test that is in less than a month, okay? So everyone should have a green formula sheet with equations on it. I want you to get in the habit of using that green formula sheet. If you were to get it out right now, if anyone could possibly find the equation on the formula sheet, that would be really good. Maybe I should give extra credit for it since you're all just sitting there. First person to find your green formula sheet and find the circle equation. Okay, second person.
Second person, no, third.
You have to actually point to the formula on your formula sheet. Did you find this actual formula? You're not pointing in the right place for this actual formula. Good, Lacey. Good. Elita, good, Tyler. Pointing to the actual formula. Eddie, good. Okay, let me make a list of who did what I asked. So I've got Judith and Tyler. Good.
Dude, look at all these stacks of
Austin,
things.
right? Me.
Charles.
Lacey.
Charles.
And Alejandro.
Wow, I got mine. I got mine.
Wait, what about me, Miss Nicholson?
Wait, come on. Wow,
That's a mess.
Okay, so you should have found that formula on your formula sheet. Guess what that means? You don't have to memorize this. It's there for you, okay? So all you have to do is use this formula. This is h, which is 0. So we put in 0 for h. What does that do to this? It's just going to be x squared. We don't need to write the 0. Okay? Then, what do we plug in for k? The positive 3, so we go y. Oh, yeah, it's a minus 3, so we do minus a minus 3. So that's a positive 3. Okay, now here's the weird part. The radius is a really weird number. It's like 1 point something, because it's the square root of 7. No, it's 2 point something. If you were to put the square root of 7 in your calculator, you would get 2.5-ish. I don't know. Okay? So I don't want you to change it to 2.5. I just want you to take the radius, which is the square root of 7, and square that. What happens when you square a square root? It cancels out the square root. So if you multiply square root of 7 times the square root of 7, it means the square root of 49. And what's the square root of 49? 7. Because the square and the square root simply cancel each other out. And that's how you'd leave your answer. It's just 7. That's it. Now, some of the problems on your homework have decimals. It's okay. You just write them down as decimals. It's fine. Some of the problems might have square roots. It's okay. Just leave them as square roots or square them and get rid of them like I did here. Okay? So you can do this, page 588. Okay, so here's the deal then. Your assignment is page